Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Thus being pierced by arrows through his ears and afflicted to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's palace. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord is never perturbed by an awkward situation created by the external energy of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 3.27 it is stated, Prakritehe kriyamanani gunah karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. A conditioned soul is absorbed in material existence under the influence of different modes of external energy. Absorbed in the false ego, he thinks that he is doing everything by himself. The external energy of the Lord, the material nature, is fully under the control of the Supreme Lord, and the conditioned soul is fully under the grip of the external energy. Therefore, the conditioned soul is fully under the control of the law of the Lord. But due to illusion only, he thinks himself independent in his activities. Duryodhana was acting under such influence of the external nature by which he would be vanquished at the ultimate end. He could not accept the sound advice of Vidura, but on the contrary, he insulted that great soul, who was the well-wisher of his whole family. Vidura could understand this because he was a pure devotee of the Lord. In spite of being very strongly insulted by Duryodhana's words, Vidura could see that Duryodhana, under the influence of Maya, the external energy, was making progress on the path towards his own ruination. He therefore considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. Yet he also saw how the internal energy of the Lord helped him in that particular situation. A devotee is always in a renounced temperament because the worldly attractions can never satisfy him. Vidura was never attracted by the royal palace of his brother. He was always ready to leave the place and devote himself completely to the transcendental, loving service of the Lord. Now, he got the opportunity by the grace of Duryodhana, and instead of being sorry at the strong words of insult, he thanked him from within because it gave him the chance to live alone in a holy place and fully engage in the devotional service of the Lord. The word gata vyathaha, without being sorry, is significant here because Vidura was relieved from the tribulations which trouble every man entangled in material activities. He therefore thought there was no need to defend his brother with his bow because his brother was meant for ruination. Thus he left the palace before Duryodhana could act. Maya, the supreme energy of the Lord, acted here both internally and externally. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupak Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Panghum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Paramananda Madhavam Namaom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Swayam dhanurdwari nidhaya mayam bhratuhu puro marmasu taditopi saitham atyulvana karnavanair gatavyatho yad uru manayanaha. Thus being pierced by the arrows through his ears and afflicted to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's palace. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme. Hare Krishna. So once again, it's a great pleasure and honor to be here at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, such a beautiful holy place, and grateful for the opportunity to serve all the Vaishnavas here and the Vaishnavis. It's a great honor and pleasure just to be able to be here at this holy place, Bhaktivedanta Manor, where Srila Prabhupada spent so much time and inspired so many to surrender their lives to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha Gokulananda. So I'd like to take the blessings of all the senior Vaishnavas present here also before I say a couple of words. Any of you ever gone through this verse, being afflicted by the words of someone? Being afflicted by the piercing words of someone? Or others are all transcendental, they don't even bother. We don't even care, being afflicted by the words. Any of you were being afflicted by your spouses? Oh my God, thank you, Hare Krishna. Any of you being afflicted by the words by your children? Piercing words? Okay, you can handle that much. Any of you being afflicted by the piercing words of your guru? And that's considered mercy, Prabhu. Mercy. Any of you being afflicted by the piercing words of some co-devotees? Okay. Anyone hurt? Anyone not able to forget? Anyone not able to forgive? Anyone not able to take it off the mind? This morning's class is for me. Oh my God. I have a lemon with me right here. Of course it was planned, they kept it here. I had asked for it. It's not that I brought it out from somewhere. What do you think is in this lemon? Pardon me? Citric acid. You're a very chemical engineer, looks like. You said straight away citric acid. What's inside this lemon? Juice. Seeds, juice, fiber. My God. Vitamin C. He's either a chemical man or a dietitian or a pharmacist or something. He's only saying vitamin C and, citric acid. Well, are you sure there's juice inside? Okay. What juice? Lemon juice? Lime juice? Lime juice? Are you sure? Absolutely sure? Potato juice. My God. Are you very sure there's lime juice in here? Look, I am a magician. I do a lot of magic. In one of my talks, I took a can of Sprite. And I asked one of the members in the audience to sign a 1 pound coin with a permanent marker. And I held this can of Sprite and just slammed the coin in the can of Sprite and the coin was gone. And then I started shaking the can and there was the sound of the coin inside the can. It was a sealed can. And then I just opened the can and poured the contents inside a cup. The Sprite came down and so did the coin which was signed by the guy. Can you imagine that? And then I asked people, look here, I have a canned seal of Sprite here and I slam a coin inside a sealed can of Sprite and the can goes inside and people were applauding. People were applauding. I said, you guys applaud when I put a coin inside a can of Sprite. And then I pulled out a fig. And I said, this fig is sealed as well. And I opened the fig. And I said, look at so many thousands of seeds inside here. Can you imagine what amazing, incredible magic that is? I put a little coin inside a sealed can of Sprite and people applaud. And here's a fig which is sealed on the tree. And there's thousands of seeds which have gone all inside it, completely packed and sealed. And no one applauded that magic. And then I said, okay, let's pull one seed out. And we pulled one seed out. And I said, inside this little sealed seed, there's an entire fig tree that has been put here. And no one applauded that magic. And then I told my audience, can you kindly applaud the magic of the greatest magician, Krishna? And there was massive roar of applause. Massive roar of applause. Now, So I do a lot of magic. I do a lot of magic. So now I have a question for you. What's inside this? Lemon juice. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? Huh? Okay. Sprite. Oh my God. Let's try it. Let's try what's inside here. Are you ready? Okay. Let's try now. You have one more chance before I squeeze. What's inside here? How many of you agree in 100% there's lemon juice in here? Okay, lime, sorry. I'm an Indian. Lime, lemon is the same to me. Okay. How many of you feel maybe there's something else? No, apart from that. Maybe there's some magic going on here. No? Shall I try? Squeeze it? Lime juice, isn't it? Lime juice. The more I squeeze, lime juice comes out of a lime. When you cut open a lime and squeeze, what do you get? Lime juice. What will come out when you squeeze? What's inside, isn't it? Whatever's inside it, you squeeze it, that's what's going to come outside. Isn't it? His Holiness Bhakti Tirth Swami Maharaj used to say, when we are squeezed, what comes out? What is inside, isn't it? Just like, what's going to come when I squeeze the lime? What's inside? You won't get orange juice when you squeeze a lime. And I won't get a Krishna conscious response when someone squeezes me when there's no Krishna consciousness inside. When I'm squeezed, I expect a Krishna conscious response. But in order to get a Krishna conscious response, I first have to have Krishna consciousness inside. Because whenever I'm squeezed, all that's going to come out is what is inside. During World War I, the British Army was having a tough time. The British Army found out that their news was leaking out to Germany. All kinds of things that were being planned inside when no one would ever have entry was leaking out to Germany, and they were taking advantage of that. They tried to figure out what was going on, and while trying to find out, they caught a guy whom they doubted. They thought he was a German spy in the British Army. But how do you know? How do you detect? So once, they just had him, he was just putting his finger near the door. They slammed the door. How many of you had that experience? If you just have your finger inside the door and it's slammed, my God, it hurts. And this man yelled an abusive word. It was in German. They immediately found out this guy is a German guy, a spy, acting in the British Army. You know, when squeezed, what comes out? What's deep within? I could be speaking very British English. But when squeezed, I'm going to say, Nalayak Kahika. I'm extremely sorry, I wouldn't say that. But that's my Hindi way of abusing someone. Oh God, what's inside? It's definitely going to come outside. And therefore, at the end of the day, bhakti, the process of devotional service, is a lot more internal work than external work. External work is chanting our rounds, external work is performing our services, external work is doing all kinds of different activities in the process of Krishna consciousness. But Krishna consciousness is a lot internal work, because when we are squeezed, what's inside comes out. Braj Bihari Prabhu, he wrote a very nice article, and I really liked it. He spoke about a Bollywood star in Mumbai. And my God, this particular man, this Bollywood star, is known for his excellent body, his physical body, He has all these cuts, his abs and his biceps and his triceps and his deltoids and his whatever else exists. I mean, really, really there in terms of the display of his body. What's quite amazing is the world adores him for that. He is really there. Really there. If you'd ask what kind of a male body would a cinema star or a body model have, here's this guy. Here's this guy. A classic example of what a male body should be like. What's incredible is what the world sees. What they don't see is that this gentleman suffers from severe backache. Severe backache. His spine is being damaged practically. You know why? Because he focused so much on what the world can see, his upper body. And he didn't focus at all on what the world doesn't see inside his trousers. His lower body, his quadriceps, his calves. And because he's focused so much on the upper body, his lower body is not able to handle it. Consequently, there are issues that he faces, pains that he goes through. And therefore, there is always something that the world sees and something that the world doesn't see. What the world sees is my tilak, which is like a highway reaching all the way from my nose till my shikha. What the world sees is the way I put my dhoti on. What the world sees is the way I chant. What the world sees is the way I sing kirtan. The world sees is how I give a talk. The world sees how I walk and move. The world sees how I dress the deities. The world sees how I cook the prasadam. The world sees all of these externals, and everyone says, wow! Wow! What's amazing is when we develop the externals, what's seen to the world, without focusing on the internals, what is unseen to the world. Like this gentleman. The unseen to the world is his quadriceps, his calves. He's not really put his efforts to develop them. Consequently, he is in trouble. And therefore, whilst we are focusing on the external developments in our Krishna consciousness, which we must, there is a great need to look at our internal development, which truly sustains our external growth. Our external growth is sustained by our internal growth. And if there's not much internal growth, that external growth only causes troubles and illnesses. And therefore, internal growth is very crucial and important, because when one is squeezed, what does come out is what is inside. This morning I thought I would discuss this theme. What should I do when I'm squeezed? Is the theme for the talk this morning. What should I do when I'm squeezed? Squeezed by a family member, squeezed by a colleague, squeezed by a devotee, sometimes squeezed by Krishna. My God, how do I deal with all of these things is what I thought I will talk about a little bit this morning. And I have taken up 4 case studies from our scriptures, and we're trying to look at how these devotees dealt with situations when they were squeezed. And that will probably give us a hint on how should we deal with our situations when we are squeezed. The first case study comes from the Mahabharata, the one we are reading today, from the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Vidura. What a noble gentleman. Incredible personality. What a noble gentleman. Man of virtue, a great devotee, trustworthy, well-wisher to all. He had incredible qualities. Vidura. The issue was, sometimes the best men can be caught up in the worst situations. You have Vidura caught up amongst Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan. We have Vibhishan caught up amongst Ravan and Kumbhakarna. We have Akrura caught up in the middle of Kamsa's palace. It's quite amazing. How many of you work? And how many of you find yourself stuck in a situation where our bosses and colleagues are not all that pleasant? How many of us have gone through what is called as workplace politics? Oh God. How many of us have been pulled down by people around us? God. History repeats itself, isn't it? Seems like. One teacher was talking to a parent and said to the parent, look, I've been trying to teach your child history in school, and he always fails in history. And the teacher said, what can he do? History repeats itself. I used to fail in history as well. History just repeats itself. So many devotees like Vidura, like Vibhishana, like Akrura, stuck up in a situation where we are not surrounded by the right people. Vidura has to deal with a Duryodhana and a Dhritarashtra. Vibhishan has to deal with a Ravana and a Kumbhakarna. Kamsa has to deal with an Akrura. Somehow or the other, they were just stuck there, And it's such a hellish situation to be stuck there. Sometimes when the people around us are not all that great, when we are working, when we are just doing something in the world, oh God, I just want to rush to the temple, rush to the association of devotees. Just want to feel a breath of fresh air, that relief. One day one man came back early home. He was back at 5 o'clock. He would generally come back at 8. And the wife said, why did you come back so early? And the man said, my boss said, go to hell. So I just decided I would come back home early. I don't know which hell you've moved to. You just want some relief, isn't it? Relief from the kind of surroundings we are there in. Here was Vidura, stuck there in Dhritarashtra's palace, trying to change Duryodhan. Vicious man. Sometimes you are squeezed by people who are very hostile, who are very vicious, who are actually by nature wicked. Not the English wicked, not the British wicked. British wicked means something else. One guy once in London comes up to me and says, "You are very wicked, Prabhu." Jai Shri Radha Gokulanand ki, Jai Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ji ki. And when he said to me, "I'm very wicked," I thought, my God, why is he saying I'm wicked? Am I so bad? Then I asked I told one devotee, he was calling me wicked. He said, no, wicked means good. I said, my God, what a language that is, you're very wicked. And one guy said, you look so fat. You're so fat. I said, I'm fat? What do you mean? At least, please don't insult me like that. Then they said, fat is a very, fat is again for like, you're very cool. You're so fat. And then the worst of it all was, they said, you're so sick. I said, man, I look like in the pink of all health. Why are you calling me sick? I never understood why would you call something cool and great as wicked and sick and, fat. But youngsters use that language, whatever it is, they just use that language. So I've also caught on to that language a little bit, But nevertheless, being in the company of wicked people who are really wicked, not the British wicked in terms of saying you're good, but really wicked like Duryodhan. Vidura was trying to change this gentleman. Trying to change Duryodhan by giving good advice. Napoleon said a good thing once. He said one nice thing. He said the world doesn't suffer so much because of the violence of bad people. It suffers because of the silence of good people. When so much is happening, the world never suffers because of the violence of bad people. Violent people are going to be there. Wicked people are going to be there. And they're going to do what they're going to do. The world doesn't suffer so much because of the violence of bad people. It suffers a lot because of the silence of good people. When good people keep quiet and they don't say things, they don't do things, violence prospers, adharma prospers, wrong things keep happening. People keep becoming victims of abuse of others. Vidura had decided not to keep quiet. He had spoken in a nice way to Dhritarashtra, the blind king, to Duryodhan. He tried to give all kinds of good advice. But sometimes how when people are just not willing to listen, wicked people, all good advice falls on deaf ears, as they say. One lady said, my husband gives me 100% advice, sound advice. She said, he gives me 100% sound advice, 99% sound and 1% advice. It's 100% sound advice. God, I must tell you, sometimes good advice just falls on deaf ears. Prabhupada used to always quote this verse, Payam panam bhujanganam kevalam vishavardhanam upadesho hi murkhanam prakopaya na shantaye. If you feed a poisonous, venomous cobra milk and banana, Prabhupada said, his venom is only going to increase. Milk fed to a venomous serpent, the venom will only increase. Prakopaya na shantaye upadesho hi murkhanam. One gives advice to such foolish, wicked people, that advice only increases their hostility and animosity. Duryodhan was so upset. One day while Vidura was advising Dhritarashtra to give up on Duryodhan, he was so upset. He decided to squeeze Vidura. he blasted. He blasted with words. Karna banair. Karna bana is words which are sharp arrows. Arrows. They just hit so hard. And then go and pierce the core of the heart. And one gets so afflicted with it. So pained by this kind of words. When one is squeezed in that way. And what comes out a lot of times is anger. What comes out a lot of times is frustration. What comes out a lot of times is lot of faith. What comes out a lot of times is exasperation in dealing with people in lives. Isn't it? My God. Whew. You know what Vidura did? He was squeezed. What was beautiful is when he was squeezed, what came out was what was inside. When a lime is squeezed, what comes out is lime juice, not orange juice. When Vidura was squeezed, what came out was not lust and envy and greed and anger and hatred and animosity and hostility and frustration. Because if that's what I'm filled with, that's what's going to come out. If I'm filled with deep negativity, what is going to come out is negativity. If I'm filled with positive hope, what will come out is positive hope. And therefore a devotee's life is a lot about filling in the right thing. Krishna consciousness, sadhana bhakti, is all our chanting, all our hearing, all our services, is to fill our hearts with the right thing, because undoubtedly we are going to be squeezed. And when squeezed, what comes out will completely depend on what we have filled ourselves with. Vidura was very helpless. How many of you have been in a very helpless situation? Okay. How many of you have wanted to correct someone but couldn't because you felt so helpless? So helpless. Oh, I can't say he's a senior person. I can't say. My God, feel so helpless sometimes. Feeling helpless is not in our control. But feeling hopeless is worst. Helpless, we don't have a choice. Hopeless, we do have a choice whether to feel hopeful or hopeless. People can make us helpless, but people cannot make us hopeless if we choose not to be hopeless. Hopelessness is in the mode of ignorance. To feel hopeless is tamoguna. Helplessness, well, what can be done? If someone comes and insults me, what can be done, isn't it? Someone recently told me that you look so ugly. Well, I do. It's okay. But he came and said it to me on my face. I don't know why. But he said, you look so ugly. Well, what to do? Helpless? Can I control people? No. Can I change a Duryodhan? No. Can I change my boss at the workplace? No. Can I change my colleagues who are engaging in politics? No. Can I change spouses, children, people around me? No. I can try like Vidura did by giving 100% sound advice. But at the end of the day, I'm helpless in terms of changing the quality of people around me. They're going to be who they are. Helplessness, just a part of life. But hopelessness should not be a part of our life. There is tremendous hope when there is Krishna in our life. You know what Vidura did? When he was squeezed, what came out is explained by here in this verse. Gata vyathoyat urumanayanaha. Urumanayanaha. What came out of Vidura was the right perspectives. Vidura looked at that whole situation with the right perspective. And he saw right there in the palace two things happening. External energy, Maya Shakti, the Mahamaya Shakti acting, and he saw internal energy, the will of Krishna acting. He saw how Duryodhan was being completely controlled by the external energy. He saw how despite all good advice, Duryodhan was still not changing. He saw how he's bound to go towards ruination. And he decided, I've tried enough. I think I can't go any longer. He saw, simultaneously as the external energy was overwhelming Duryodhan, he saw the internal energy of Lord Shri Krishna. He saw how Krishna was giving a message to him. That here was time for him now to put his bow, Swayam Dhanurdwari Nidhaya Mayam, Swayam Dhanuhu, the same bow with which he was protecting Dhritarashtra. Dwaram, he put that bow at the door and decided to leave. Why? He saw, if I stay here, I'm just going to be squeezed more and more and more, and the person is not going to change anyways. He realized, the only solution I have is to change my perspective to see that Krishna has a plan. Krishna is telling me through this guy, Duryodhan, that well, I must take shelter of his lotus feet. And thus Vidura decided to go on pilgrimage by traveling all over India and taking shelter of the holy places of pilgrimage, in particular the deity forms of the Lord. Yani Sahasramurte. Going and taking shelter of the holy places and the holy forms of the Lord in these holy places. And therefore, one option when we are squeezed, one response when we are squeezed, is to look at a difference in our perspectives. Vidura had the right perspective internally, therefore when he was squeezed, the right perspective came out. And what was the perspective? He could see the Lord's energy in action in two ways. For Duryodhana, his external energy, and for himself, his internal energy, taking that as the plan of the Lord, he left. How many of you had this question, when should I quit? What is the tipping point at which I should quit? How long should I keep handling? How long can I keep going on, How long can I allow someone to squeeze me? Isn't it? What is that tipping point where I say, enough is enough? How many of you would like to hear an answer to that question when you say, I have to know, now I know that enough is enough. Vidura only quit when he had tried. He had tried giving advice, he had tried correcting the person, he had tried to keep that relationship going, he had tried to give as much as possible good counsel to them. After trying it all, he still kept living there. He still kept living there. And then he was squeezed. He saw it as Krishna's plan and left. When do we quit? We only quit when it's beyond us to handle and things go to the level of abuse. When things go to the level of abuse, to keep tolerating it and to keep going through it is again the symptom of mode of ignorance. And therefore, one has to handle. One can handle. Take it. As long as one can take it, one should take it. But when it reaches a level of abuse, then one has to consult devotees. One has to consult Guru. One has to consult the Vaishnavas. And based on that good advice, then one can say, okay, I see Krishna's external energy, the Yogamaya, having a plan for me, and I must now move on. Otherwise, I'll be squeezed to such an extent that everything will be finished in my life. And therefore, the first way, when someone's squeezed, the response is perspectives. If we have the right perspectives within, the right perspectives will come without, to see how Krishna has his external and internal energy in action. The second case study is from Valmiki's Ramayana. In first case, the person who was squeezing was a vicious man, Duryodhana. We understand he's a cruel man. You don't expect much from people who are vicious. We don't expect much from people who are wicked. We know that if we deal with these guys, one day they're going to anyway squeeze us. But when that squeezing comes from close family, oh God. A Duryodhan does it, it's fine. If Yudhishthira or Arjuna would have done it to Vidura, that would have been too much. If Dhritarashtra does that, it is fine. If Bhishma did that to Vidura, that would have been too much, isn't it? My goodness. Sometimes people, I'm telling you, oh God, so much fighting and so much things going on within family, within close relationships, so much keeps going on. In the Valmiki Ramayana, we find, Ramnavami is coming up soon, so I thought we'll take a case study from Ramayana as well. In the Valmiki Ramayana, we find the story of how Maricha disguised himself as a golden deer and started frolicking around Sita and Ram's hermitage. And Sita said, I want to have this deer. So beautiful. I've never seen such a thing in the creation of Brahma. It's so beautiful. And Lakshmana and Ram said, that's why it's misleading. He said, no. It's so beautiful. We must take this deer. We will have this deer and take it to Ayodhya when we return. I'll play with it. I can have a beautiful deer as a pet. And she said, oh my dear. I want that deer, please. Ram, I want that deer. Ram said, okay, no problem. I'll go. And he said to Lakshman, look Lakshman, it's not a safe place. Just recently I've killed Khar, Dushan and all of this 14,000 asuras. There is danger lurking around. Please don't leave Sita. Ram left into the forest. Lakshman stood there, protecting Mother Sita. And suddenly, from the forest comes this loud sound, Lakshman, Sita, loud sounds and yells. And immediately, Mother Sita turned towards Lakshman and said, Ram is in danger. Go save him. Lakshman said, Ram in danger, Mother. Khar, Dushan, 14,000, not 1, 2, not 14, Mother. 14,000 of these wild asuras and rakshasas were killed by him single-handedly just a couple of days back. And even if it is a asura, he'll handle him. She said, no. You must go and protect. Lakshman said, trust me. Trust me, he can handle it. Sita said, look, now I know why you came here to the forest. You had this vicious intentions of enjoying me. You know, if a Duryodhana or Dhritarashtra says, who cares? These guys anyways keep speaking like that. But if a person who's so close says this, oh God, Lakshman was hurt. According to Tulsi's Ramayana, it's not in Valmiki's Ramayana, he made a circle around Sita, a line, and then he left saying, don't cross this line. Sita had hurt him, you know. And he felt pained. When you serve someone, when we spend time with someone, when we love someone, when we have a deep bonding with someone, and they say something, or they do something, that causes more pain than anyone else doing something to us in this world. You know, he was pained. He went to Ram. Ram had already killed Marich. The demon was dead. And he went there out of joy that Ram had finished this demon to hug Ram. To hug Lord Ram. He went and he put both of his arms around Lord Ram to hug him. It was the first time in 39 years of their being there that Ram stood there with his arms by his side. Never before this instance had Ram ever done this. Anytime Lakshman came and put his arms around Ram, had put his arms around him and hugged him tightly, making him feel the warmth of his affection and his love, making him feel the shelter of his presence. And today, God, he stood there coldly, his arms by his side, not responding at all. And forget about hugging him. In a fury of rage, Ram started shouting at Lakshman. This is what you do. I trusted you that you wouldn't leave Sita. I trusted your competence. I trusted your integrity. And this is what you do? That you leave her and you come rushing to see where I am? My God. After all that service, Lakshman hadn't slept a wink. The Sri Vaishnava Acharyas have explained that there are two kinds of lotus flowers. One lotus, it blooms in the day and closes in the evening. The other lotus blooms in the night and closes in the day. There is no lotus in the creation of Lord Brahma that remains bloomed all through the day. But there were two lotuses that remained bloomed for 14 years without closing even once. The two eyes of Lakshmana, his two lotus eyes, which didn't close for a split second. He stayed awake. He made a beautiful cottage for them. He cooked for them. He went and collected fruits and roots and herbs to serve them. And here it was. Have any of you ever experienced that after doing so much, when people squeeze, Squeezing, my God, the squeezing business is going on too much today, this morning, isn't it? Squeezed! My God! In the earlier case, Vidura was squeezed by a guy who was anyways vicious. But now, the squeezing was happening from someone whom Lakshman loved the most. Ram mistrusted his competence, and Sita mistrusted his character. That you came here to enjoy me. I'll tell you, Lakshman was really, really affected in his heart. And Lakshman's quite a volatile person in one sense. Gets really angry sometimes, When Ram was exiled, he said, I'll kill my father. Bring the old Dasharath in front of me, I'll chop his head off. Because he loves Ram so much, anyone threatens Ram, he can't take it. But he expresses his anger. You could expect that Lakshman would be angry. The angry young man. My God, could expect he would do that. Even with Shurpanakha, he was the first ENT surgeon. Ear, nose, throat surgeon, he cut her nose and her ears off. And Narasimhadev is the first gastrointestinal surgeon. He does such a surgery, he just pulls the intestines out. Surgery and done. Surgery successful, patient dead. Srila Prabhupada, I heard one Prabhupada disciple giving a class, and when this painting was being made, this particular one of Narasimhadev, Prabhupada said, when he saw this painting, Prabhupada said, this is good, Narasimhadev looks good, but there's not enough blood. Add more red. Prabhupada said, add more red. She should look really, there's a lot of red there. My God. And Krishna is a general surgeon. Whatever part comes, he operates. Hand, leg, ear, throat, whatever comes, beaks, he just operates. Lakshmana, angry, one could have expected that he would come out with a lot of anger. What he did when he was squeezed was very beautiful. So the first response is perspectives. The second response is to press the pause. To press the pause button. Lakshmana, before he could come off and respond or react to that situation, he decided to press a pause. And when he pressed the pause button, he thought to himself, in his 39 years of interaction with Lord Ram and his 25 years of interaction with Mother Sita, he started remembering, was there a single time in 39 years that Ram had done this to him? No. This was the first time. He thought to himself, in his 25 years of interaction with Mother Sita, after Ram was married to Sita, had Sita ever made such a statement or an allegation, ever said something like this? The answer was a no. It was the first time Ram had done something like this. It was the first time that Sita had done something like this. In pressing that pause, when he was squeezed, he reflected. And he thought, when somebody is very affected, one shouldn't take that person's words or actions too seriously. Because what they'll say and they're emotionally disturbed. Sita was completely emotionally disturbed because of the worry for Lord Ram's security. And here she had come forth in a way that was not so pleasant. Ram was completely emotionally disturbed because of Sita's security. And here he had come forth in a way which was so cold. Ladies and gentlemen, there's one thing definitely. One should never take the words or the actions of an afflicted person very seriously. And therefore there is a need to give a benefit of doubt to people around us when they behave, to at least consider that they probably may be afflicted. There may be something going on because of which they are reacting in a certain way. Here was Lakshmana, pressing the pause, thinking, God, they're pained. Ram feels insecure for Sita. Sita's worried about the security of Lord Ram. Once in their entire relationship and in their interaction, they had done this. In that pause, Lakshman went back down in the memory lane starting to recollect all the wonderful things that Ram had done to him. As he remembered all the loving dealings with Ram, as he remembered all the wonderful shelter he felt with Lord Ram, his heart swelled up in profuse gratitude to Lord Ram. His 25 years of interaction with Mother Sita, down the memory lane, he started remembering all the wonderful things that Sita had done to Lakshmana. And as he remembered all of this, his heart swelled in profuse gratitude for Mother Sita. And as he thought about all of these things, he said, God, there have been so many emotional deposits. This one withdrawal. There's been only one withdrawal. Ram just didn't hug me and shouted a little bit once in 39 years. And Sita made this allegation again once. One withdrawal once in 25 years. Out of deep gratitude, Lakshmana, when he was squeezed by the words of Sita and squeezed by the words of Ram, what came out, if I squeeze lime, what comes out is not orange juice, what comes out is lime juice. What was inside came out because he had paused to reflect what truly was inside. Last night I was saying, when one is very angry, the tongue starts functioning faster than the mind. Because we don't process our thoughts. The thoughts are not processed, our responses are not, we just come forth straight. In that little pause, he got time to reflect what was truly inside. And what was truly inside was profuse gratitude, And that gratitude definitely came out. So the second thing is to press the pause. And what comes out when squeezed is to say, gratitude. So many wonderful things being done for us by the devotees, by the people around, by those who are squeezing us. Oh my God, squeezing tight. You know what the problem is? If it's just once in a while, that squeezing is okay, isn't it? But if it keeps happening, they keep squeezing, they keep squeezing, they keep squeezing, and then to be grateful becomes an extreme challenge. My third case study this morning is from a person who squeezed, a devotee who squeezed others. The first case was a wild, vicious person, Duryodhana, who squeezed Vidura. The second case study was very close relationships. Lakshman was squeezed by Ram and Sita. And the third case study comes from a beautiful story in Sri Rangam, from a Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. It comes from devotees, How many of you have experience of devotees squeezing? Anyone? No one? My God. Devotees squeeze a lot sometimes. They just squeeze. One time one devotee came to Srila Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, is it sufficient wouldn't it be sufficient to read your book, Srila Prabhupada? Aren't your books enough? And Srila Prabhupada held his ear and said, books cannot do this. Devotees can. No. He said, books cannot do this to you. Devotees can hold your ear and correct you. And sometimes devotees can really hold your ear so tight and so twist it so hard. And my God, the squeezing can be so much. And like I always say, the devotees' arti becomes, they sing, ito devotee, tato devotee, yato yato yami, tato devotee, bahir devotee, hriday devotee, devotee madim sharanam prapadya. Surrounded by devotees everywhere. You walk here, devotees, walk there, devotees, you get up, devotees, go around, devotees, take prasadam with the same devotees, dance with the same devotees, listen to class with the same devotees, chant japa with the same devotees. God, they're just all over the place. Vodafone, in India, Vodafone would have this advert, They would say, wherever you go, the network follows. So the devotee network doesn't leave us. Srila Prabhupada, Satswarup Maharaj, His Holiness Satswarup Maharaj once made some mistake serving Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada said, he called Satswarup, he didn't call him Satswarup that day. He always call him Satswarup, come here. He made some mistake. And Prabhupada said, "So, Mr. Isaac Newton, how are you?" Prabhupada says to Satsvarup Maharaj, "So, Mr. Isaac Newton, how are you?" And Satsvarup Maharaj is telling the story when he came to Mumbai. And he was a little confused. Why is Prabhupada calling him Sir Isaac Newton? And then Prabhupada said, once Sir Isaac Newton had a cat. And the cat gave birth to a kitten. And Sir Isaac Newton, he had made a hole in the door for the cat to pass through. But when the cat gave birth to little kitten, Sir Isaac Newton made another small hole right next to the big hole, thinking that if the cat goes out of the big hole, the kitten will need the small hole to pass through as well. And then Srila Prabhupada said, he discovered so many things, but he couldn't discover that if the big cat can go out of the hole, the small kitten can also go out of the hole. And then Prabhupada said to Satsvarup Maharaj, so Isaac Newton. And then they were walking at Venice, so the morning walk, they were just walking, and then Satsvarup Maharaj had forgotten his bead bag in the car, and then for the morning walk, and he was rushing towards the car to get the bead bag. Srila Prabhupada said, "What happened?" He said, "Prabhupada, I forgot the bead bag in the car." Prabhupada said, "Mr. Isaac Newton." Prabhupada would sometimes do that. One lady devotee, Prabhupada in the morning program, one lady devotee was serving Charnamrita, and Prabhupada took that Charnamrita and tasted it, and the Charnamrita was salty. And Prabhupada like, and then Prabhupada turned to the lady devotee and said, "There is salt in it." And the lady devotee said, "Prabhupada, Krishna's mercy." You can imagine, you make a mistake and then you say it's Krishna's mercy. And then Prabhupada said, "Not Krishna's mercy, your foolishness." So to have Guru, to have Srila Prabhupada, to have senior devotees correcting is a great blessing. It's a great blessing to have someone who says, "Okay, you're going wrong." But sometimes the interference can be so much. And the squeezing can be so much, that you say, "My God, I think enough is enough now, We have in Sri Rangam a great devotee of Lord Ranganath, whose name was Parashar Bhattar. And Parashar Bhattar, he had a disciple. One day his disciple came up to his guru, Parashar Bhattar, and said to Parashar Bhattar, "Guru Maharaj, what are those qualities that I need to have so that I can realize myself?" And Parashar Bhattar said, "Well, you go to Tirupati, and on the hill in Tirupati there is a great devotee whose name is Anantacharya. Go and take shelter of Anantacharya and ask him this question: what are the qualities that you should have in order to realize who you are?" Now Tirupati is not close, several hundred miles. And there's no cars and planes and none of those things. He just walked all the way and crossed the 7 mountains, the 7 hills in Tirupati to come and look for Anantacharya. He came to Anantacharya, offered his obeisances, and Anantacharya said, "Yes." He said, "My Guru Parashar Bhattar told me I must come and ask you this question I have in my heart." So what's the question? He said, "What are those qualities that I should have in order that I can realize myself?" Anantacharya said, "Well, I'll think and tell you. I'll think." A day passed. He never answered the question. 2 days passed. He never answered the question. A month had passed by. He never answered the question. And he was engaging him in all kinds of services. Squeezing. Engaging in all kinds of services. He's doing all kinds of services there. 3 months passed by, no answer. 4 months passed by, no answer. 6 months passed by, no answer. And after 6 months, a group of pilgrims came to Tirupati in the morning. And there was prasadam being served to all. So this disciple of Parashar Bhattar who had this question started serving all the pilgrims. All the pilgrims had taken prasad and he made his plate and he sat down to take prasadam. And Anantacharya said, No. There's more pilgrims coming. You first serve them, then you eat. The second group came. He served them prasadam. He made his plate and sat down to eat. And Anantacharya said, No, not now. There's another group of pilgrims coming. Wait. All day long, he didn't allow this disciple of Parashar Bhattar to eat prasad. He just made him serve prasadam all day long. And night, about 9:30, 10 in the night, This gentleman makes his plate of prasadam and sits to eat. And as he takes the first morsel of prasadam, Anantacharya came to him and said, "Oh, so I think you asked me a question 6 months back. What was that question? Tell me again." He said, "Wow, finally after 6 months of doing all of this and now today of not even allowing me to eat, he's asking me finally, what is that question you asked me?" So this gentleman said, "My question is, what are those qualities you need to have in order that you realize yourself?" Anantacharya said, "That's very simple. You have to have the qualities of salt. You should be like salt. You should be like a chicken. You should be like a crane. And you should be like yourself." He said, 6 months I washed his clothes. 6 months I cleaned the ashram. 6 months I took all this trouble. And all day I fasted today, serving people, and now he asks me what the question is, and I ask him this question, and he says, "Oh, in order to realize it yourself, you have to be like salt, you have to be like crane, you have to be like a chicken, and you have to be like yourself." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "That you should understand yourself." Such a cryptic message, My God. Squeezing. I asked, 6 months I have been serving and this is what you give me? 20 years I have been serving here and this is what you give me? Oh, 35 years I have been rendering devotional service, this is what I get at the end of the day? My God. The disciple of Parashar Bhattar, he left. And he came to Sri Rangam. The third perspective of when one is squeezed, particularly by devotees, may not even be intentionally because of certain situations. The response that came out was twofold. One was prayer and service to the Lord, depending on the Paramatma in the heart. When devotees deal badly, Paramatma is there. When devotees deal badly, other devotees are there. When Anantacharya had not dealt badly, but had really kind of tested him to the core, he realized, I can't get the answer to my question from him. He's answered the question, but I don't even know what it means. He turned back to his guru Parashar Bhattar and asked Parashar Bhattar, what does this answer mean? And then Parashar Bhattar, of course, gave an elaborate answer, which I'm not taking up now because it's out of the context today, of why you should be like a crane, why one should be like salt, why one should be like chicken, and why one should be like yourself. He gave a very elaborate answer for self-realization, how one should have these 4 qualities. But when one is squeezed by devotees around, there's 2 shelters. The super soul in the heart to turn to, the Lord to turn to, other devotees to turn to, the spiritual master to turn to, service to turn to. If that's what has always gone within, when we are squeezed, that will come without as well. Rather than feeling disgruntled, rather than feeling completely let down, which we do feel, human beings, those emotions do come. But what does come out is the right response of turning to the power of prayer, turning to the power of service, turning to the power of shelter of other devotees and Guru to understand how to handle that situation. Last but not the least is a case study from the Chaitanya Charitamrita where the Lord squeezed. In the first case, a wicked person like Duryodhan squeezed. In a second case, family, brother and sister-in-law squeezed. In a third case, a devotee squeezed. But in the fourth case, the Supreme Personality of Godhead squeezed. When God squeezes you, then whom do you turn to? If some devotee squeezes you, turn to God, you turn to Guru, you turn to the other devotee. When God squeezes, what do you do? In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we find a classic case, the story of Kalakrishna Das, who was rejected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He made a mistake. Oh well, everyone makes mistakes. He made a mistake. he had turned away from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he was caught by the Bhattataris. Of course, they had cast a spell on him. He had not kind of willingly gone and run to them. Kalakrishna Das had not willingly gone. He was under a spell that these Bhattataris had cast on him. And under that spell, he was attracted. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went, pulled him by his shikha. Oh, what a hope. He pulled him and dragged him back to his lotus feet. And when he came to Jagannath Puri after his South Indian tour, Lord Chaitanya called Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and the other devotees and said, look at what an assistant you gave me. Look at your Kalakrishna Das. He was meant to serve me and I was serving him. Like someone was telling me, the spiritual master was telling me, one guru, he was telling me, there is all kinds of miseries in ISKCON. There is the Adhyatmika Klesh, the Adhibhautika, the Adhidaivika, and the fourth is the Adhidasika. The Klesh, the troubles that come from the servant. Lord Chaitanya said, look what my servant did to me. He said, I can't handle him any longer. Take him away. Of course, Lord Chaitanya was wanting to set an example. Kalakrishna Das was crestfallen. When the Lord squeezes, my God, when the Lord squeezes and rejects, will the Lord reject? Will Krishna ever reject? Will Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ever reject? When he did reject Kalakrishna Das and when he did reject Chota Haridas, he only did that to teach an example. When one sannyasi had difficulties in Krishna consciousness and he had come and spoken to Srila Prabhupada and he was crying and he was saying, Prabhupada, now I have a family and I'm not able to serve you, Srila Prabhupada. Will you reject me? Srila Prabhupada said, Lord Chaitanya was the Supreme Lord. He could reject. I won't. Lord Chaitanya only rejected to set an example for the world of what true principles of Vaishnavism are. But the Lord never rejects. Here in this case, when Kalakrishna Das was rejected, the fourth response when squeezed is persistence. Persistently waiting for the mercy to come. And to be persistent means the devotees give shelter. When devotees are doing some squeezing, the Lord gives shelter. When the Lord sometimes squeezes, the devotees give shelter. And therefore we find Nityananda Prabhu and all the other devotees saying to Lord Chaitanya, we should engage him in some service, my dear Lord. Your mother is wanting to get news of you, of what you have done in South India. We should send Kalakrishna Das to Mother Sachi and the devotees in Mayapur from Jagannath Puri with news of what you have done in South India with some prasadam. And the devotees engaged Kalakrishna Das in that service and gave Kalakrishna Das shelter. And therefore, if ever we feel Krishna squeezing too much and nothing's happening and what's going on, confused, there's always the devotees who give shelter. Therefore, Baldev Vidyabhushan, in one of his commentaries, he mentioned this verse. He said, Siddhir bhavati vaneti samshayam yadi sevati achyuta. He said, I'm not sure if one will achieve perfection by serving the lotus feet of Krishna. Baldev Vidyabhushan quoted this verse from Shandilya Smriti. He said, but one serves the lotus feet of the devotees, perfection is certain because Krishna will give his grace. And therefore here we have 4 case studies of being squeezed. And in each of these 4 cases, what came out was what was inside. In the first case, we have a person who was squeezing Vidura. Duryodhana was squeezing Vidura because he was wicked. But what came out was the first P in responding, perspectives. The right perspectives in seeing that Krishna's external energy was playing on him, but Krishna's internal energy telling me that there's a plan for me to take shelter of Krishna. In the second case, we find Lakshmana being squeezed by Ram and Sita. Out of situation. They were afflicted, they were pained, they were worried about each other, and they were being squeezed. What came out was pressing the pause button. And what came out was gratitude for the wonderful things that Ram and Sita had done to him. And therefore, he responded out of gratitude by not leaving them. In the third case, we have a devotee squeezing, testing patience sometimes, And in such a case, we find the disciple of Parashar Bhattar doing the third thing, Third P. The first P, perspective. Second P, pressing the pause for gratitude. The third P, prayer. Turning towards prayer, turning towards service, and turning towards other devotees to get that shelter. And in the last case, we find, Kal Krishna Das, apparently squeezed by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, rejected. But then the fourth P is persistence. Persistently waiting for the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come, and that mercy came through the devotees. And therefore, when the Lord squeezes, the devotees are there. When the devotee squeezes, the Lord is there. But it's always a beautiful path of hope. And thus, the seminar this morning was entitled, What Should I Do When I Am Squeezed? And here are four case studies from scriptures and from different sources in our Vaishnava literatures of how different devotees responded when they squeezed. But definitely, from a lime juice, what comes out is lime juice, not orange juice. And therefore, Krishna consciousness, as we began by discussing, was trying to fill in the right things within, so that when we are squeezed, what comes out is the right response. I wish to thank all of you for your kind attention. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran ki jai. Gamavet Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hare.